spirit of matter. And this is January for Ascendant, Sun, Moon, or Stellium, which is a couple of planets in Taurus. We are with Luna ruled Ascendant, and the Moon is already on the 22nd degree of Capricorn. We recently had a new moon, and Sun is in 20 degrees Capricorn, and the midheaven is ruled by Mars, which is also in Capricorn and exalted, 5 degrees in a bisextile with Saturn in the 9th house and Jupiter in the 11th house in Taurus. Venus in the 6th house, and indeed we're talking about ascendant Taurus. So this is a Jupiter day, Mercury hour, and let's begin. Yes, this comes in delay, but I want you, if you're listening right now, you still have the chance to plant something that will grow for and will stay in action for at least 17 years or so. And this I take from Lada Duncheva's advice. And it's better starting off at least tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 12th. And this is where the Mars trine Jupiter perfects. So thanks Victor from Astro Victor for that. So you want to capitalize on the new moon in Capricorn simply because you're not going to have another skies like this. So yes, Uranus is retrograde, but this is why I call this episode Eurikah. Okay, the lunation today, the new moon in Capricorn today, happened in your, yes, let me look at this. First of all, it was in the bisextile was involving your first house and 9th house. So you already something began in your 9th house. It could be your worldview, traveling ideas, with Venus here in your 8th house. Okay, so you might be looking into kind of your investment portfolio to see what can you fund when it comes to higher studies, when it comes to maybe your own teachings. Okay, maybe you have to travel to a conference or something. When it comes to traveling somewhere, if you have a spiritual or religious commitment that maybe you are taking right now, then you are looking also to your balance. Okay, how much money can you afford to spend? Do you need to take a loan to do this? And something came up suddenly in the last couple of hours, even something came up suddenly to you, some idea of where this is leading, and you're going to be taking action very much as of tomorrow until kind of January 23rd is where the moon is still growing, and it's very important to do something, anything, whether it is it can be, yes, it can be something to do with health. For you, if we take a look at kind of the bisextile and Pisces in your 11th house, it's very much to do with, whether it's taking on a new degree or taking on or writing a thesis or writing something that will turn into a lecture that you can later teach. And that has to do with something you're passionate about, that is idealistic, it is beyond the self, something like this. Okay, and the key words that we are having are nervous system, health, okay, health of the nervous system, and our nourishment, okay, so in a pleasurable way, healthy system in a pleasurable way, everything that supports it, from the from the economy to housing to traveling. Okay, so traveling to heal your nervous system, stuff like that, to connecting with nature, to the type of ideas and beliefs and religious practices or spiritual practices or scientific. How do you do science in a way that supports your nervous system? Okay, one of my Eureka's when I was in academic studies and I was doing philosophy of medicines, and one of my understandings was like, hey, I'm supposed to study something or study about the health of something. It's also involving the body, and I need to incorporate a more corporal experience to my studies that open up the gate for many variety of experiences, some of them quite extreme. And you might be having a little bit of a similar notion. Okay, how do I heal my nervous system? How do I maintain a healthy nervous system? The mantra for you is a kind of a Eureka, okay? Because we are going to be running as 2024 sets in. We have 3 months where all the planets are direct as of January 27 until April 2, 2024, okay? And so you want to be up to speed, and you're going to have a mantra that holds you. So think about Eureka as a mantra, and healthy nervous system in a way that is not so chemical or alcoholic, but rather natural. And if you're thinking, oh, well, let's do some psychedelics, I'm not saying there's anything bad with that. I want you to consider something I took from Gordon White. There are many plant teachers. Okay, it's not just weed or psychedelics. There are many plant teachers that you can be considering and adjusting them to you. This is going to be particularly useful when it comes to your career. And you're thinking, Shirley, there is nothing in Aquarius. First of all, yes, Pluto is going to get there, but also this is your 10th house. This is your career. If you have your midheaven there, Natalie, it's also your legacy. And so what is sustainable for you is a nervous system healing practice. Astrology can come in handy, but it's not just astrology, connected with you. You see me broadcasting this, okay? What you don't see me is observing the sky, is painting my art, is making my blends, is learning astrological magic, okay? You might want to incorporate the astrology into your living being, and astrology is a solution, because if I think about myself in 2015, 2016, thinking, oh, well, I need to be studying in a way that correlates with being a healthy body and incorporate, I'm studying health, I need to be practicing health as well. How do I do that? And in terms of the schedule, kind of like the academic pressure, began to feel artificial and not constructive to the foundation of actual scientific revolution that we are embarking in with Pluto and Aquarius. And astrology began to be a certain dynamic system that accounts for order and chaos in a way that I haven't run into so far. That's how I got into astrology. So for you, there may be some sort of a certain cycle that opens up opportunities and possibilities. And again, you want to make sure that the values of connecting with nature, biodiversity, will and consent here with you being ruled by Venus is a lot about connections, and all about the win-win. So will and consent is, if Jupiter is about the choices that you make, and Venus is about willingness, pleasure, and Jupiter is about joy. So you want to be joyously, willingly consenting to embark on a new beginning in your life, and want to take actions on it as of tomorrow. So you want to be thinking about what would be the one thing that would contain the everything that I want to create for like the next 20 years. As what is the one thing that changes everything? So granted that I can't create your love for you right now, but love comes in many unexpected ways. On the, if you think about it, the healthy nervous system and the closest to love, I think, is the sense of discovery of something beautiful. Okay, like, hey, I discovered something beautiful, and that's the closest to love that we can feel, even if we don't have, like, let's say, a partner, um, or that can stay with us for like at least 2 decades. So that is, yes, if we, of course, we connect with nature, we can connect with animals, and if you think about something that is kind of like when all things are changing around you, how can you find it within you, and you're not in love with anyone, then it's probably going to be that Eureka, that sense of discovery. So let's talk about a personal planet. So January 14, Mercury ingresses to your, yes, again, to your ninth house. Mars is going to be spending time there. And depending if you are a day sector or night sector, it can be more or less benefic for you. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So if this is your malefic offsect, okay, if you are like a sun above the horizon, kind of like sun between the 12th and between the 8th or 7th above the descendant and the 12th house, or even first up until the ascendant, kind of like before the ascendant, then that can be quite benefic for you. You can be acting on, you can be taking durable action, you can be doing great things, you can be writing a PhD, you can be if you need to launch something that's going to stand the test of time, like a PhD or a thesis of some sort, that can be a great thing. If you have an article or a mass, okay, that you write, that can be something that stands the test of time. A book, an actual book, okay, not a vlog or something like that, just a whole book is very much good for you to do something like that. And Mars is going to give you the stamina to be proceeding that. Now, if Mars is your malefic out of sect, oh, I'm sorry, I switched the sects. Okay, if you, what I previously said is when Mars would be your more problematic stuff. Okay, so you're gonna have to contend with things. Still get the benefits, but the thing is that it's going to bring in argumentations, religious wars, or philosophical wars with your teachers, with your students. It's kind of like Mars is the malefic out of sect for you. It can also bring kind of like accidents just around when you go to like your synagogue or your mosque or your, I don't know, church or any such sort of kind of like retreat, a religious retreat. Then it's a problematic thing. Yeah, you're gonna see the problems as well, but it doesn't mean you can't get the benefit of that. Okay, Mars is in Saturn's sign, and Saturn is your malefic of sect. Saturn gives you the resilience to deal with things. It can become your teaching that you send on kind of like a bigger platform, it's the 11th house, or you can have a new activistic endeavor. You already begin to feel what is this about, okay? Mars is already in the 9th house. January 14, Mercury joins Mars in your 9th house, and Mercury is about communication. If you need to sign anything, let's say you're going abroad to studies, this is where you're going to fill in the forms. And you already know about this because Mercury has been there. Okay, so it's just going back and over the same themes, and now it's kind of like filling in the small dots. Okay, that you need to fill in, the bureaucracy that you need if you need to travel to a conference, or the technology that you need. You might be buying your laptop to use for whether it's filming if you travel, or it's for your writing if you're going to academia, or if you're writing a book. So you're going to be making these purchases, signing these contracts, filling in these forms, and making these investments, and making these conversations. Okay, if you decide on what will you write about, I really suggest that if you can schedule something before the moon, before January 23, that is going to be more benefic for you, because we want something that stands the test of time, and for your insight to be holding for like at least 2 decades. So that is a great time to begin. And January, let's talk about January 21 first. So January 20, the sun is going to conjoin Pluto on the anaretic 29 degree of Capricorn, and the moon is going to trine it from Taurus. You may or may not want to capture this if you're doing astrological magic. It's very experimental. It is, again, conjunction is a hard aspect. I'm not saying no good can come from this, but you want to be aware that this is a hard aspect, okay? Sun conjunct Pluto gives an extra power to the sun, but it also makes the solar things in your life more potent, and that can be both benefic and malefic, okay? It just can be too overbearing, okay? You can become too overbearing, but it can also be, Pluto is about accumulating great wealth or culminating something or preserving something. If you want to preserve like a forest or something of the mountains or something of Capricornian scenery, then that can be fitting. Later, January 21, Pluto is going to ingress into your 10th house with Saturn in your 11th. Now, I take this from Tsveti, and I really honor the teaching of Tsveti about Pluto, and this is simply saying Pluto is going to create oscillations between extremes wherever it goes. Okay, so I heard about it before. I think Heather Elon has had great teachings of Pluto. Tom Jacobs have great teachings of Pluto. But definitely, for some reason, when Tsveti said that, in the beginning, I didn't take that much into account. It was just going from one ear, going out of another. And I was like, damn. If something I should be telling you about Pluto ingress, it's that teaching. Because if you take a look at your 9th house, you may have turned from a person who has no education whatsoever to a professor. Or alternatively, you have been a professor and then you have been, maybe you had to give up your degree, or maybe you've been accused of purchasing that, or maybe plagiarism, Pluto's Plutonian stuff, whether righteously or not. Maybe there was a scandal as well. So you could be finding yourself both as the person of authority, the plutocrat, and the person who's completely at loss of authority concerning the situation. It can also be that, for example, you gain authority, and now the younger generation is kind of like bringing in things that you have no idea what these guys are doing, and you can be like a certified, think about a certified astrologer. Then later people kind of like rediscover Hellenistic astrology, like Chris Brennan is one of the great names that kind of was resisting to study the topic and then made a career out of teaching it, which is a kind of like an interesting story. So suddenly these students bring in something you have very little knowledge in, and now it becomes like a whole trend, and you're like certified. But in modern astrology, where Neptune is the ruler of Pisces and Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, and you work with Placidus and all these whole sign guys, what are you going to do with that? Okay, you have to train yourself again. So you want to think about what Pluto has been doing in your 9th house since 2008. Maybe you were both fundamentally religious as well as completely heretic, and you kind of find your center point of after oscillating between the extremes, finding your balance point, your center point. Now, as of January 21st, and the sun is going to conjoin Pluto as it does this, what we're going to actually be seeing is Pluto doing the same thing, but in your 10th house. 10th house is your career. It's your career environment, your working environment. That means that you may have ups and downs when it comes to your career. You could be unemployed to a great boss, or you can be a CEO and kind of be unemployed. And you see that that probably is going to affect your finances as well. It is also, you could become a parent. It's 2 decades, okay? You could go from child free to become a parent, hopefully not the other way around. Um, yes, it is possible that a parent may be very, very dead by the time that this transit completes. It's 20 years, okay? So it could be your parent, it could be your boss, okay? Maybe you go from not having a boss to being your own boss. Or your career might change. You might oscillate between, let's say you become from a scientist and kind of like everything is technology, there is no such thing as, and then you'll find out that your whole, as you delve into the science, you realize that all the great minds were channeling something, and you look at what is it that they were channeling, and then you become, let's say, I don't know, an intuitive astrologer, okay? All of these things can happen to you. The beginning of this channel in its modern position was channeling science, and that is exactly what I did when I was taking a break from academia following the Me Too. I think it's still on my bio here. And I tried to do channeling experiences, okay? It was very fascinating. And so I learned about both kind of like the biases of channeling, what it can yield, and so on and so forth. Now it's called spirit of matter. So that is something that will affect you for the next 2 decades. Pluto is still going to withdraw back to your ninth house. You're not done with it. You'll be done with it in November 19, 2024. Pluto is going to ingress for good, what S. J. Anderson calls for good, into your 10th house. Okay, what happened the last time Pluto was on this point? Because it has been on this point in January 2023 to March. Okay, think so? Yes, and then March it became kind of like its ingress to Capricorn. This is one of those. You want to be thinking to the beginning of 2023 and the end of 2022, and you want to be thinking what happened at around that time. The ingress, the 0 degrees Pluto to Aquarius is loud. Okay, and I thank Lada Jeva for reminding us we had a couple of banks collapsing. So Swiss Bank was collapsing, and then 2 great American banks were collapsing. So we're heading there again, okay, for another one, and then the for good will be November 19, 2024. We can expect the collapse of the entire financial system as we know it today, and the attempts to shockingly introduce us to another one, okay, kind of like a digital one, whether it's decentralized or super spying on everybody. And immediately I think about the lecture of Vlada with Grassi about that made a lot of order for me. It's kind of like in 1 hour and without sexually shaming women. I think talking both about Lucifer, which I consider is kind of like the first 3 chakras, then Christ consciousness, which is not Jesus, it's the consciousness. Okay, Jesus is kind of like one of the manifestation of Christ consciousness, which is the heart chakra, and then the Ahriman, which is the upper chakras. Okay, and so it's kind of like you need to find your way into technology and expansion through the filter of Christ, the heart, and embodiment. One of the things I really like about Nate Scherer, they actually began as a fan of this channel, and then later bloomed into his own channel dealing with sexuality and spirituality. And the fact is that embodying our sexuality is kind of the lower chakras, while staying heart connected, is allowing for that spirituality to grow. Yes, you don't want to be disembodied from your Luciferian place. You just want to be balancing it with Christ consciousness, and you want to be open to the teachings of Ahriman. That's going to give us the technology, okay, the nervous system. Everywhere is a nervous system, and this is, of course, the teachings of Rudolf Steiner, kind of adapted to modernity by Laduncheva. And so another source for this is Gigi Young, but you have to take into consideration that she's speaking from a Christian perspective and not an all-inclusive, okay, not a possibilitynist perspective. And so when it comes to the teachings of Lucifer or shaming women for being sexual, shaming people for being sexual, there can be a little bit of a bias there. So we want to make sure, but it's a great source for anything kind of like spirituality, many things. So that's another great source for you to consider. And so if you think about the fact that you don't want to disembody your desires, you don't want to be disconnected from your heart, and you also don't want to be closed up to modernity, okay? Because there is an asset in modernity. But you also don't want to become so materialistic that you believe that, oh, aliens created us and that's it. Well, who created aliens then? Okay, that would be a great question. So yeah, another thing about this Pluto. Well, Pluto is considered like giving the power to the people. You have to understand that this is a baby step. So what's happening in the world today, definitely we have an awakening where everybody understands that kind of like we have to take a stand, we don't want to sit on the fence, we have to pick a side. And yet we are in baby steps when it comes to understanding the essence of a political issue, whether it's economical, whether it's national or international, whether it's about what we are shown in the media, okay? People are more aware, the younger generations are more involved, and I want to bring in the teaching of Albert Camus in L'Ombre Belle, and that is basically the notion that young people have the energy and the willingness to rebel, but not the wisdom of what and how, while the people who have the wisdom of what and how no longer have the energy of young people. And so changes do need to occur, and they occur in Aquarius with Pluto there. Definitely there are going to be scientific revolutions, religious revolutions, revolutions about the nervous system, revolutions about space technology, life and death. Okay, Dan Waits just ran into a story about people sending their corpses to space. And he said, one thing I did not have in my bank of delineations for Pluto and Aquarius is people sending the dead people to space. But it's kind of like Pluto is trash, or what we want to compost. Saturn is dead people. And this is a sign that's originally ruled by Saturn, okay? So it's ruled by Saturn. I wasn't thinking about this either. But you're going to have more and more things associated with that Pluto, and they're going to take extremes. So even when you think about power to the people, who are the people? Okay? Average Joe does not live on Twitter. Okay? We don't know who is average citizen Earth and what they think, how they feel, and we're going to be exposed to a lot of beliefs and worldviews and perceptions and expectations of people from we the people. Okay, so Pluto is going to bring these oscillations, and to you it catches you up in your public image. Okay, you're a very prominent figure in this, and we need to see where your Saturn natally is. It starts off with the networking, with your 11th house, with your goals and dreams. Okay, maybe you are thinking about we the people. You also need to understand who is Saturn in your life. Could be very affected by one of the parents. Saturn can denote a father figure, but if you grew up with, let's say, two mothers, then, you know, one of them is Saturn. It's just so, or maybe you grew up with two fathers. So which is this Saturn figure? What do you receive? You want to be cautiously inspecting that and connecting the dots, but also giving yourself time. If you don't know, then it's okay. Things will unravel themselves. January 23, Venus is entering Capricorn. And so right now she sits pretty in your sixth house. While you might feel like you have a throat soaring because sixth house and Venus spending time there, and this is also ailment, but you also might enjoy the company of pets. You might have a beautiful horse. That there's a beauty. Venus is beauty. Jupiter is kind of like horses. Or you might tend into your health, to your duties and obligations. Sixth house, kind of like your duties and obligations, your service to the world. Or if you have employees, these are your employees as well. If you have pets, these are your pets. They can also be enemies at this place. Okay, kind of like when your colleagues are in competition or something, or they don't like what you do. And so Venus is going to be doing her thing until January 23rd, but you can also have nice associations. You want to be aware of kind of like enmities, okay? Because Venus is a win-win thing, and Jupiter is kind of like optimistic, but it can be like enemies that you don't think that they are enemies, in which case, you know, they are. You're gonna come up with your own way to set clear boundaries here. Other than that, it could be nice time, maybe adopting a pet, maybe having a new health regime. You might be eating big fruits, you know, with a nice reception here with Jupiter in your first house. Definitely, if there is any health issue, it's a good chance that you will diagnose, especially if it's physical, because it's gonna make itself very obvious. You won't be able to miss it, and that is the why and how you will tend to that. As Venus ingresses into your ninth house, oh wait, she's in your eighth house. Mercury is so much at its shape period just now, and releasing from a square to Neptune. I have every excuse to be saying that. And Venus is applying to a square to Neptune. I have every excuse to miss the houses. Okay, this was eighth house. What does it mean? Well, we talked about you checking out your balance to make sure you have money for whatever you want to do there in the ninth house. There can also be tending to traumas. Now, I know that we are living in a little bit of a crazy world war, so you could have had a certain traumatic event, even recently, that this Venus is symbolizing, and what basically is coming out of it is basically tending to those issues that were swept under the rug. And the issue is going to be big enough for you to notice. And now, since Scorpio is your seventh, and the eighth house, it can be like some joint assets or some intimate partner, and the energy that you share together. So it can be like setting boundaries in energy. Okay, setting boundaries in energy, and again, sometimes it's not like a bad thing. It's just to make sure that you tend to that, so that you got yourself and you got your other, and you can blend into each other. You can also have your individual autonomy. That is highly important to be able to have an intimate partnership, business and or pleasure, marriage, or something like this. Anything to do with investments. How does your money make money? Now, because we have this nice reception from Jupiter in your first house and Venus in your eighth house, you might be benefiting. Okay, some benefit can come to you through the eighth house. Okay, but also something might require your attention. You might be investing. You might be reassessing your investments. with Sagittarius. You want to think also about the values. Think about, there are the values that guide what I do for a living, which is second house. That's for you, Gemini, Mercury. And then there are the values of when I invest. Okay, what is my value when I look upon an investment portfolio? Okay, I want it to be in alignment with my values. Okay, if I invest in the company that makes pills that later are used to mass rape people, perhaps it's not aligned with my values. Yet I would like to believe that it's not. So how do I tackle that? Okay, how do I withdraw the money from where I don't want it to be and reinvest it to where I do want it to be, or at least tend to that? Sagittarius stuff, one of the values that you could be having is freedom. So it is also mutable signs. So you might want to be able to be moving money around, or be able to travel with this money. Okay, there are things you're wanting to do with this money. I am not in a position to advise you on what to do with your money, but definitely you're looking into that. And so when Venus is ingressing into your 9th house, January 23rd, now you are at the 9th. You could be traveling, you could be at the academia, you could be teaching something, you could be at a conference through the academia, you could be traveling because you did, and just replace academia with kind of like your favorite religious institution. So this is kind of like all the things that can be. It can be a lovely time. Venus in Capricorn is very practical. So if you are traveling, you are expecting, you're not going to be surprised if you feel kind of like lonely, or but Venus Saturn, the thing is that you might not have as many friends around, okay, which again, it's practical. Okay, you're traveling for a practical reason, depending on your sect, and you can be more or less friendly for you, but you might also meet certain people that are like teachers. You may meet people in cold lands. You might travel to cold lands or to rocky lands. Okay, mineralogy perhaps can be a nice topic for studies. History of religion, history of philosophy. Philosophy and history of science can be still compatible, although you might be more on the traditional, like kind of methodic level, rather than the revolutionary. We usually study revolutions there. But then it depends on your Saturn. If you have Saturn natal in Aquarius, that might be very much the deal for you. When it comes to religion, so you might be traveling to lands to hear about kind of like the religion from the elders, the oral stories. Venus is the voice, so oral stories of religion, and stuff like that. Yeah. And so when it comes to your values, you're considering your religious, spiritual, or philosophical values, or philosophical values. Or when you travel somewhere, what are your values? Okay, what do you want to improve upon? Also, when we take, let's say, an astrocartography, consultation, like Victor is given, then you want to be asking yourself, what are my values? What do I want to improve upon? Because something is going to be improved upon, and some other things are kind of like more sacrificed or not dealt with as you pick a location to travel or to live in or to study. So that is the planets. Okay, then we have one final thing to talk about the planets before we talk about the last lunation, and this is Uranus turning direct on January 27, marking the beginning of it's not exactly 3 months, it's kind of like 2 months and a little bit of all planets direct. Okay, speeding up of the manifestations of it. Everything that you set to will begin to gain momentum for these 2 months. The good things, but also the difficult things. And so Uranus is already on the degree where it will station, it's already stationing, okay? It's on the 19th degree, has been there for a while. January 27th begins to go direct on the 19th degree. Just like with Pluto, if you think about what happened since 2008, this is another giant. It's a mini giant. It's since 2018, it's not 2008, and it's going to be until 2025. So it's already wrapping up. Okay, there is a little bit of happenings when for this cycle, because what has been happening in the past 6 months, and so the many things have been happening. Protests, demonstrations all over the world. The WEF and WHO, okay, have been doing many things within this chaos, and eclipses, but also the October War. Okay, this is the October 7th, and then the October War. And you can't really say it was only in the Middle East. Now, in the background, we have Kurds being genocided. We have Afghani people being deported from Pakistan and genocided because they don't want to go to the Taliban regime. We still have the things with Eritrea, with Sudan. We still have 6 million people being genocided in Congo. We still have, okay, Texas considering independence. We still have ongoing things coming up from Netherlands. So Geert wanting to annex Flanders, the Flanders in Belgium. And then we have Putin eyeing Netherlands, okay, while the Ukraine war is still ongoing. Syria, there is no peace in Syria, okay, for a decade now, okay. So all of these things are still occurring, and Uranus is revolutions, is protests, is bombings. It's going back forward. Yes, it is going back forward because this is what it's doing, okay? It's going over the shade period where it was retrograde. So it's going back forward over all of these events. One particular thing that I do want to say, on the 22nd degree of Uranus, it was for a while, it was that the 7th of October happened. The 7th of October happened, including what we call ritual sacrifice. I call it an abusive ritual. It's not a ritual abuse, it's an abusive ritual, because growing hibiscus could replace all of that for all the deities, including Luciferian, okay? And this I know from African people. So, and so we are dealing with rape and murder. We are dealing with torture of men, women, children. Okay, and this is not about who is to blame, who started this, who this. This is something that had occurred, and we are also dealing with a certain biblical story, and a certain story of modernity that depicts going from slavery to supposed freedom to the promised land. The recent one was the Holocaust, and the mantra "never again" is now has been playing out within the Israeli and the Jewish community very prominently. In Passover, Jupiter is going to conjoin Uranus on the 22nd degree again. It's going to start on the 21st degree and then go to the 22nd. The 21st degree is when Israel went boots on ground into Gaza, as well as bombing Gaza, and a complete destruction of the immediate infrastructure of Hamas. The infrastructure of Hamas are in the entire Gaza Strip, and by the way, also in Israel. Then, if you want to destruct the infrastructure of Hamas, then it will destruct the entire Israel as well, because that's where it's at. So, so those things. But the 22nd was the ritual abuse. Okay, and I'm talking about torture, rape, murder, all of those things. And it's not just like you think massacre, and like, oh, what atrocities. These are the atrocities. It's not news. Happened also in Ukraine, happens also in Congo. Very likely Kurdish are not exempt from it. Very, very likely Afghani people are not exempt from it. And so what I want you to understand is there's, as a result of all the protests, okay, the Israeli response, all the protests calling to free Palestine, but also in the chaos, the doorways of Jews around the world were marked with stars of David and swastikas and whatnot, okay? So, and again, it's not about blame game, it's just want you to know. This is what happened in October. The second time Uranus is going to go direct on this degree is going to be in Passover, month of Nisan, around Passover, okay, month of Nisan, and it's playing out already on a spring, but also the story of Egypt. And the story of Egypt went something around like this. The Israelis were slaves in Egypt, and then came Moses. Moses tells to Pharaoh, and he's mumbling, right? Moses tells to Pharaoh that God is going to bring disasters if he doesn't let his people go. And of course, you get a mumbling person talking to you that God is going to bring, you send them away, and 10 times things are happening. One of them is pandemics, okay? The 10th one was in Passover, and this is the story. The Jews had to paint their doors red, their doorways red, with blood. We don't know if it's menstrual blood or blood of a sacrifice of an animal. And at that day, in all Egyptian households, so all non-Jewish households, every Jew had to mark the doorway red, so to remember that, okay, so they won't slip over that. In every Egyptian household, the first boy of every Egyptian household, regardless of the status, was murdered or killed or found dead or whatever. That is the story of Passover, and we have the motif of the doorways of Jews being marked. I don't know who planned who. It is unlikely that story will not be harvested in a certain sort of strategy around. And mind you, astrology is not the esoteric thing, the fringe thingy that people do for parties, okay? Nations have their declarations of independence and other pivotal moments pre-elected, sometimes centuries ago, sometimes decades ago, according to various branches of astrology, okay? Israel, for example, has its midheaven on Procyon. I talked about it in other videos. Which is the denucleificator of the sign, and also other things. So there are many various interests involved, various hidden things, and you know, without money there is no country. So what is a country? It's the conglomerate of the fundings of the country, which is hidden from the crowd, and so there are many things to consider here. But definitely the motif is highly unlikely that will not be played upon. And again, as per the Jewish narrative, is more like Shalach et ami, okay, let my people go. We will not be enslaved. We were conquering the promised land, and there are miracles, and these miracles had to do with the weather, with the flood, okay? You want to be paying attention, because it seems like God is going to create a lot more, okay? Whatever we call God is going to bring in many things, many wonders, okay? And they have to do with the weather, maybe even natural disasters, and those things We don't even know where and what they come from and what do they want. And there is also Jupiter is religion, Uranus is radical. So the risk of a radical religious revolution that is happening on the 21st and 22nd degrees Taurus, very adjacent to the sun of the state of Israel. And so that is something you want to think, where were you around the time of October? And it's not a political statement, it's kind of like more a survivalistic statement. Where were you at that time in the world? Was it happening around your neighborhood? Was it running to your doorway? Were you mistaken to be a Jew? Were you the kind of people who put the mezuzah, kind of like the Jewish symbol with the fish, being a Christian, kind of expressing solidarities with the Jews? Like, you want to be thinking about that. Because even though we are still in January, this is where Uranus is heading. Okay, and the Jupiter-Uranus, which can be great for sciences, for philosophy, it can also manifest in that way, on those degrees. And you just want to pay attention, okay? You just want to pay attention and set intention. Beautiful deities to work is Medusa, Gorgon, and you have to understand the Medusa, Gorgon that I'm speaking about, okay, the Algol, Medusa, Gorgon I'm speaking about is the woman that was raped and murdered. She was not believed, and she was thought to be a traitor, and she was betrayed by Pallas Athena, which was a righteous warrior. Okay, and so you can think about how it played out in October, kind of like Israeli women, but not only Israeli women were raped and murdered. It's also something that needs to be spoken, and it's not like it doesn't happen by Israel. You get what I'm saying? Okay, these are problems that are very intricate. They're not just happening when there is a political conflict, and not only by the political enemies and so on. And so those things are quite intricate, and the wisdom of Medusa Gorgon, it has also to do with protecting from in spirit and in matter, protecting your voice, protecting your credibility, protecting you from those ritual abuses, and it has all kinds of natures. Okay, it has kind of like a more shielding phase, it has a more attacking phase, and there is the red algol, which is when she's eclipsing, and this is where, just like we would not manifest an eclipse usually in astrology, this is where we don't usually call like red algol. I know there's always going to be someone who's going to say, oh, this is, please study this very deeply before you consider such a thing, because eclipse has unexpected fated results. And what we actually want is kind of like the shielding, as well as the well, in here it's not a return to sender, because we don't want to rape anybody. Here it is more to shield and defend by any means necessary, okay, and to make sure that nobody even thinks to do such a thing ever, and so on and so forth. And this is where our goal comes into play, but it's also when it comes to people whose validity of testimony is being questioned. Okay, it's kind of like the crazy making, all that. This is also useful, and therefore it's also useful. People being diagnosed with all kinds of things, or forced hospitalization that usually ends up with murder and so on, in these circumstances, and so on. So this is one great thing to get to know. Another is Procyon, and I talk about Procyon also in other videos. And again, when you work with Procyon, you understand that Procyon is more tackling the way in which, when we are trying to protect ourselves, we are doing something that is actually detrimental, and Procyon allows us to see what it is and to change the way we protect ourselves in a way that is actually benefic to us, and to abolish practices that are to our detriment. Okay, you want to look at Nelson Mandela episode that I made, in the JFK episode that I made, in the episodes for Procyon that I have on my channel. So, enough with that. Last thing to talk about, the absolutely last thing to talk about is the full moon in Leo, 5 degrees Leo. This happens on the 25th of January. It's going to be a full moon that is a T-square with Jupiter. A T-square is supposed to be resolved in the opposite sign to the point of the triangle, which is Jupiter, and so it's supposed to be in 6 degrees Scorpio. But the ruler is nothing there, but the ruler Mars is in your 9th house, pretty much conjuncting Mercury there. Okay, and Saturn in Pisces. So there is it could be a constructive tension to kind of have a reality check, and as well both to your worldviews and how do you communicate them. Or if you need to travel, you might just travel to relieve yourself from this tension. For you, it is happening in the 4th and 10th house. So it's kind of like mother and father, or mother and mother, or father and father are disagreeing on something pertaining you, okay? And maybe about a conference that you need to go, or your goals and dreams. Okay, it's kind of like two parents arguing over your head about your goals and dreams, and your resolution is kind of like, maybe, I don't know, you just go for it, you just travel. But there's also this conjunction to Mercury, where you need to communicate things, you need to sign things, and so on. So your partner could be helping you out if you have a partner, because Mars is ruling your 7th house, but it's also ruling your 12th house. So you want to make sure you're not undermining yourself at this time. It's basically a time of letting go of baggage. Okay, this is usually, it's kind of like a crescendo that builds to something, and then you resolve it with taking action to do with this action can be a conscious thought, or to teach something, or to go to a conference anyway, or to go with a partner. But you want to be making sure that the actions of you and your partner are not kind of like undermining you, because Mars is also ruling the 12th. It can be, it's not as sudden, but you can have a decision to travel, or actually travel at this time, or you decide on a topic that you want to study, and kind of like yeah, but it's also, it can be also a sense of like, well, the work-life balance, the home life and career are not balancing out for me, and what I do about it is just go on a retreat. I don't go to work, and I don't go home. I go to the church and confess to the priest. I go to, I don't know, an ashram, and I'm like, I will resort this tension in that way. And so everybody's equally pissed off of you or let down by you, and you can proceed on with your life and release this moment. But there can be actually nice things happening there with your worldview or your dreams and goals that you might want to capitalize on. You might also find a partner there. So this is January. This is January. Venus is going to apply to square Neptune. So we've released from the Mars square Neptune, we've passed the Mercury square Neptune. Venus is now applying to square Neptune. This means that you can have an ideation and disillusionment around your dreams and goals. And it's happening from your 8th house, not 6th, 8th house. So if there is some sort of like an intimate relation or intimate encounter, because the ruler Jupiter is kind of like in your 1st, kind of like an 8th house relation, I want you to read about 8th house relationship synastry. Okay? Just a point of reference. Okay? 8th house relation, YouTube it, 8th house relationship synastry. Okay? This is where you could be highly idealizing, or somebody is highly idealizing you, and it can be a disillusion afterwards. This is also kind of where you could be going through this, not but with a relationship, but more with investments. Okay, and so, but Neptune brings a deep longing. So when Neptune is making a hard aspect, it's bringing in those deep longings. So let's say, I can give examples from my own world. Okay, I'm an aromatherapist, even certified. Who would believe? Um, with my relation to certification, but it was more like for fun, for joy, and uh, there was a lot of time where I wasn't really buying essential oils pretty much because of I was growing my garden. Okay, I was choosing to allocate my the resources that I've had to these things and to allocate my time and energy to these things. And then there came the hard aspects with Uranus, with Neptune, and I began to buy essential oils, which I'm very glad I did. But it kind of means that I have to rely on other sources to eat this month. And so it both gives a romantic, passionate flair to what I do. Okay, because I'm passionate enough that it's that important to me. But it also drained my wallet a little bit, or a lot. And this is, you want to be treating this as a deep longing that will, it's kind of like a wave. If you have been suppressing a desire for all that long, you get a tsunami of it. And indeed, I bought a tsunami of essential oils. And made some stuff with it, and kind of like found really good stuff, and I really love it, and it will definitely be working with me in the coming months. And so this is how you could be spending. You're gonna making this spending or this relationship at the worst timing ever, because there is such a deep longing there that you need to honor. And now you can experience a sense of loss, but I want you to honor the experiences of Neptune there, because it's not like, there are some people who advise you to keep your wallet tight. Okay, it's kind of like when I was young, then people would say about pregnancy control. They say you take the pill, the pregnancy pill, you put it between your legs and you keep it there. First of all, it's incorrect anatomically. You can get pregnant. You just have to make sure you lift your legs up or something. And it's even more pleasant for the penis person. But the concept was that you have to close your legs, or you have to close your wallet. And usually it's not the story of Neptune. Okay, it's an outer planet. It's the planet of deep longing that you need to see. How do you just surrender to that deep longing? If it has something to do with what you're invested in, a deep relationship you have, or with purchases that you make, okay, then you might be taken by again kind of like a wave of this Neptune. And Neptune lessons is usually about surrendering. It's the wave. What happens if you meet a giant wave? You allow it to carry you back to the shore. This is it. This is the work with Neptune. It does sextile Pluto, where is the place where you find your power. Venus is not making any aspects to Pluto anymore. It's like enough. Okay, so it's not about finding your power right now. It's just about letting go and allowing that wave to take you back to the shore. Now, if you're gonna have people, let's say in the 25th, mother, father, boss, spouse, home, criticizing your fiscal or relational choices, that's just a part of what's to be. Okay, these are the hard Neptune aspects, because we budget ourselves, but Neptune reminds us that there was this deep longing, and you haven't been doing that. Now at the worst time possible, you're going to be doing that. And you say, oh, what can I learn it from next? So sometimes you can learn, and sometimes it's just surrendering to the waves and allowing it. And sometimes the lesson is that the wave is going to take you back to the shore. And this is the Neptune story. Okay? So you're going to be having that one with 8th house themes. So the blending of energies of and assets and teachings of you and another in a very intimate way, and your goals and dreams. Okay? That's what's up. Yeah. Well, should we talk about the closing sextile of Mars? Yes. Mars will be sextile in Neptune from Capricorn. Okay? Mars will be sextile in Neptune when it's exalted. Talked about it even on December. It's a blessed time. And yeah, it's kind of like that is when you will be able to act on what you were trying to do when Mars was squaring Neptune. So think about, what did you do when Mars was squaring Neptune? Okay, for me, I bought a bunch of essential oils. I had a bunch of ideas that I guess as Mars is going to sextile Neptune, I'm going to act on them and get them going. With Venus, you want to be paying attention and wait for the closing sextile. There's going to be when Venus ingresses into Capricorn, but already in February. And then you're going to get the chance to, let's say you're having a little bit of an encounter that triggers all of your traumas. Venus ingress into your 9th house. You may have the adjusting worldview or kind of more pragmatic view, or you meet somebody in the 9th house scene where you actually do have this spiritual connection and not just the longing for it, or it's more mutual. So this is it, this January for Taurus. I have finished with the January 2024. Time to begin work on February.